So glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Today we are going to be talking about Karine Jean-Pierre. We haven't talked about her for a while, but she's got a new book out, and she's no longer a member of the Democratic Party, supposedly. And when you find out why, you're going to get a good laugh out of that one. So make sure you hear about that. We're also going to talk a lot about Andrew Cuomo and his interesting message in the final 2 weeks of this New York City mayoral race. He's already setting the groundwork for who's really to blame if he doesn't beat Zohran Mamdani on Election Day. And we'll also be talking about how Hamas keeps slaughtering people who live in Gaza, other, Palestinians, and nobody seems to care, except maybe Trump, which is interesting. So we'll take a look at that. And so, Jim, we'll be talking about Cuomo in the second martini, but interestingly, he appears to be showing up on Fox News almost as much as he showed up on CNN during the pandemic. It's almost like he's got a certain strategy going into the last couple of weeks of this campaign.
Wait, Greg, who's Andrew Cuomo related to at Fox?
No one,
because he was on every night during the pandemic, and he and his brother Chris had that wacky prop comedy. This is the swab for your big nose. Never mind the fact that these two guys look very similar. I don't want to foreshadow everything in there, but when you're appearing on Fox News, you're attempting to appeal to a particular demographic in New York City. I don't find that cough there is that I just can't swallow what Cuomo's trying to sell here, but that's more to come in just a few moments.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, let's talk about our first great sponsor of the day. And once again today, I'm thrilled to be wearing a fantastic shirt from Mizzen in Maine, one of several shirts that they sent me, and it could not feel better. It's so light. It's even lighter than the normal golf shirt. This one is kind of a dark red. I'm usually a gray, black, blue, white kind of guy. That's most of the colors that I wear. But I like this one. It's such a light fabric. It feels great. It fits great. Just like everything else you're going to get from Mizzen and Maine. And you know the saying, you look good, you feel good? Well, the problem is most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. Yeah, they often look sharp, but they're stiff and they're hot and they're high maintenance. You either got to iron them all the time or you got to take them to the cleaners, and it's just a hassle. Not the case with Mizzen and Maine.
Listeners, raise your hand if you're surprised that the colors that Greg Corombos wears are red, white, and blue. Very fitting. Are you wearing a performance fabric dress shirt? Well, it turns out Mizzen and Maine invented them more than 10 years ago, and since then they've perfected it with modern fabrics. Mizzen and Maine shirts and pants look refined, yet they're stretchy, lightweight, moisture-wicking, wrinkle-resistant, and completely machine washables, which means no more ironing or dry cleaning.
Yeah, right now, Mizzen and Maine is offering 3 Martini Lunch listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmaine.com. Promo code 3ML20. That's Mizzen, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Maine, M-A-I-N.com. Promo code 3ML20 for 20% off. Mizzenandmaine.com. Promo code 3ML20. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Maine stores in select states. All right, Jim, on to our first martini. We should point out pretty early on here that we have no good martinis today. We've got a bad one and we've got a couple of crazy ones, as we kind of outlined there in the open. But let's take a quick look at what's happening in Gaza, since nobody else seems to care. This is from the Free Beacon. New! Hamas is commandeering schools and hospitals to go after its opponents in the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Authority's propaganda outlet, Al-Hayat Al-Jadida, reported that Hamas's internal security forces have begun summoning opponents from schools, tents, and hospitals controlled by Hamas members for interrogation. Hamas is notorious for its use of such sites, but Israel neutralized many of them as part of its 2-year war in Gaza. Now with the IDF beginning to pull back, Hamas is, quote, working to restore its pre-war status. Foundation for Defense of Democracy senior research analyst Joe Trusman told the Free Beacon. It's all part of Hamas's effort to keep its grip on Gaza amid pressure from the Trump administration to disarm. And shortly after the ceasefire went into effect, Hamas militants emerged from their hiding spots deep beneath Gaza and began executing civilians in the streets. Hamas is also trying to retake control of the lucrative humanitarian aid channels in Gaza, reportedly summoning employees in the international development and aid agencies in order to obtain information about the amounts of aid and the distribution methods. Now, the normal people who have been talking about, the horrible genocide among people who live in Gaza, well, they're pretty silent on this one. You're not hearing from the radical Democrats. You're not hearing from Starmer and Macron. You're not hearing from the UN. There's not massive protests on college campuses. But you know who does not want to see this? President Trump. And here's what he said at the White House yesterday.
You know, we have 59 countries that agreed to the deal. We have a peace in the Middle East for the first time ever. We made a deal with Hamas that, you know, they're going to be very good, they're going to behave, they're going to be nice, and if they're not, we're going to go and we're going to eradicate them if we have to. They'll be eradicated, and they know that. So they went in, and I don't believe it was the leadership, but they had some rebellion in there among themselves, and they killed some people, you know, a lot of people. But this is a violent group. You know, you probably noticed over the last 100 years, this is a very violent group of people. And they got very rambunctious, and they did things that they shouldn't be doing. And if they keep doing it, then we're going to go in and straighten it out, and it'll happen very quickly and pretty violently, unfortunately.
Not sure rambunctious is the adjective I'd most commonly used for Hamas, but I don't know who he means by we. I really don't want that to be any American troops. But Jim, what do you make of the complete lack of concern about Gazans being slaughtered and what you just heard there?
Yeah, I was going to say that rambunctious is a term I'd use to describe toddlers in nursery school, maybe romper room. Hamas, it's a little more... I think harsher terms are, and President Trump did use a bunch of them there. I'm going to quote from Washington Post editorial just from a couple of days ago. Quote, before the ink even dried on the latest ceasefire agreement, Hamas enforcers emerged from their underground dens, fresh-faced, well-fed, and clad in clean uniforms. Hamas declared war on at least 4 Palestinian clans, several of which are thought to have been cooperating with Israel. Clips of Hamas commissars executing bound men in the middle of the street or shooting suspected thieves in the legs have circulated widely, and that's just what has been out in the open. On Saturday, the U.S. State Department warned that it has credible reports that Hamas is planning an attack on Palestinian civilians and warned that measures will be taken to protect the people of Gaza and preserve the integrity of the ceasefire. What that might look like remains unclear, end quote. So, you know, Hamas, like, none of us are exactly shocked by this. It's clearly, you know, technically the ceasefire is holding, although, again, Hamas is not really behaving like it's in, you know, in any type of a ceasefire. And you're now at a point where there's a question of, you know, Vance is going over there. The administration was entitled to have a victory lap for the release of the hostages. But I think the long-term health of this ceasefire looks really shaky right now. And as you noted, we're seeing executions and violence against Palestinian civilians. And as far as I can tell, nobody outside of the United States government is registering any displeasure over this. You know, for the last 2 years, a little bit more than 2 years since October 7th, we have seen reflexive, almost on October 8th, people were preemptively denouncing Israel for its retaliation against Hamas. People were everything Israel did was, you know, the worst ever. The focus of the United Nations, the focus of the European nations, protesters out in the streets, gallons of ink spilled. It was the worst thing ever. Hamas is executing people. Nobody's got anything to say. And it just kind of demonstrates that this is not, no one really looks at the Middle East objectively. Everyone comes down like a ton of bricks on Israel. Everybody kind of looks at Hamas doing this and shrugs and says, that's Hamas. That's what they do. And or they're being rambunctious. Again, not the word we would have chosen, but so just deeply frustrating for this. And people say, why can't they reach peace in the Middle East? Well, when you only hold one side accountable, that's going to be a major impediment. Why does Hamas do this? Because they know they can get away with it. Because they know there is no other entity, either in the Middle East or in Europe or anywhere else, who's going to attempt to hold them accountable. The only tool for accountability for Hamas is at the end of Israeli weapons, it seems.
Exactly. And so, you know, Israelis aren't involved in this situation. They were involved over the weekend when it looked like the ceasefire might be broken before Vance could even get over there. Hopefully he's able to calm things down. And hopefully we can get this Arab peacekeeping force in place before everything falls apart. But it's very difficult over there. I'm not sure killing other Gazans violates the ceasefire. It certainly should, raise a lot of animosity towards Hamas as they go through this barbaric process. So who knows? But
Greg.
Hopefully at least builds up a lot of hatred towards Hamas because they're certainly worthy of it.
What 2 words are required to make up the word ceasefire? You're supposed to cease firing. I think it's right there in the name. So executing people, are you firing weapons? Well, then you didn't cease. Now, did you? And so, yeah, I think this is clearly violating the spirit of the ceasefire, if not the actual text.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we would like to see happen, but it doesn't look like they're going to go easily. And we could have called that a while ago, I think. So we'll find out what happens next. All right, let's talk about your health. More than 30% of Americans have a sluggish liver, and that's a problem that often goes undetected until the very last minute, unfortunately. But Dose is on a mission to educate all of us on why it's so important to maintain your liver health. And Dose has created an incredible product to help you do just that. Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's filter. Plus, it tastes great. Dose. It's great for your liver.
Your liver is the second largest organ in your body. Yes, gentlemen, you too. It's responsible for more than 500 functions in your body, and it acts as your body's filter, flushing out all those unwanted elements and breaking down what you consume into essential nutrients. The liver produces and regulates your cholesterol, stores vitamins and minerals, and impacts digestive and metabolic health, amongst many other things, which is why Dose's science-backed formula promotes your liver function, can aid your digestion, eases bloating, and can even boost your energy levels.
Yeah, it's great for fighting brain fog. You get better sleep. It's also gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and vegan. So support your health with Dose Daily. Save 25% on your first month when you subscribe at dosedaily.co/3ml or enter the code 3ml at checkout. Please note the 25% discount applies only to subscription orders, not one-time purchases. You can cancel anytime, no hassle. That's dosedaily.co/3ml to get 25% off your first monthly subscription with the code 3ml. All right, Jim, off to New York City. We are now 2 weeks away from Election Day in Virginia, New Jersey, New York City, and everywhere else that's having an election this year. Andrew Cuomo is behind in the polls. I have yet to see a single poll where he's competitive in a three-way race. I have yet to see a poll where he's actually ahead. If somehow you could convince Curtis Sliwa to get out of the race. But as we're about to find out, Curtis Sliwa's not going anywhere. Andrew Cuomo, though, has suddenly found a great new affinity for Fox News. We're going to have two different clips from two different interviews on Fox News. First of all, he's going to talk about the civil war that's happening inside the Democratic Party and how he is the moderate in this fight.
This is still an ongoing civil war within the Democratic Party where you have this extreme radical left. That's what Zohran Mamdani represents. They are socialists. They are anti-business. They are anti-police. They're anti-law and order. They are anti-Israel. And I am a quote-unquote moderate Democrat. I want to create jobs. I want to enforce the law, improve the quality of life. Also, I have the experience and the record and the competence to actually do the job. I was governor for 11 years. I was Housing and Urban Development Secretary under Bill Clinton. I was Attorney General. I know how to govern. And the far left doesn't even think about how to govern. You know, Zohran Mamdani never had a job. 34 years old. He's been an assemblyman. He passed 3 bills, worst attendance record in the New York State Assembly. They don't get that being mayor means you have to operate, you have to manage. Any given morning, there could be a storm, there could be a shooting, God forbid there could be a terrorist attack. So it's that civil war on the Democratic side.
There's so much to unpack there, but then he also...
You beat me to it, Greg. That's my line.
Oh, man, there's just so much irony there. But then he also is talking about how, looks like I'm behind in this race, and there's only one reason for that. Curtis Sliwa.
To Republicans, I say, you're New Yorkers. We're all New Yorkers. And this is about the future of New York and saving New York City. And the only alternative is Zohran Mamdani. Curtis Sliwa is not an alternative. He is not a viable candidate. You vote for Curtis, you may as well vote for Zohran Mamdani directly. And if this city becomes a Zohran Mamdani city, a socialist city, It's going to be the death of New York as we know it, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah, it's not on the Republicans if you lose again to Zohran Mamdani. I'm pretty sure Curtis Sliwa wasn't in the Democratic primary. But, Jim, what do you make of Mr. Moderate here, Andrew Cuomo, deciding that he's the reasonable one, and he's so reasonable that he's really the only choice for Republicans?
Greg, I can count on people in elected office and politicians over the years that I really like or that I really admire. One hand, maybe two hands. Right. There's a lot more competition for the politicians I cannot stand. And Cuomo, you would have thought he would have fallen out of the top 10 by now, but he keeps finding new ways to always a strong competitor year after year for the national title. If this is a civil war, Andrew Cuomo already lost the first battle, right? He's already had one matchup against Zohran Mamdani. And let's remember that when the New York City primary began, Andrew Cuomo had massive advantages in name ID and fundraising and all that stuff. He was the establishment candidate, right? Mamdani was a relative unknown, and he blew it. He fumbled it. So what the whole thing about, oh, I'm an independent now and I'm not a Democrat, like Cuomo already had his best shot against that. He lost the primary. Why are Republicans and right of center New Yorkers obligated to come running to his rescue? I've been saying this for really months now, and if Sliwa had not agreed to appear on our podcast, I'd still feel the same way. But I do think it was a good interview, and I do think Sliwa makes a good case for himself. If you're a right of center New Yorker, maybe you're conservative, maybe you're not, but like you're right of center. What is Andrew Cuomo offering you other than not being Zohran Mamdani? When he says we have to save New York City, except for all the senior citizens I killed, right? When you said he's in a three-way, I first thought that was a sex scandal reference, but it's not. He was only responsible for groping state troopers, which, by the way, when you're groping someone who's armed, that's real confidence. That's real cockiness that you're not going to get held responsible for anything you do there. Andrew Cuomo is just a really sleazy, horrible guy. And if Jim, you're saying he's better than he's not. Are you saying he's worse than Mamdani? No. Is he better? Probably. But like, if you want a right of center New York City voter to vote for you, you got to put more on the table. You got to offer. And so, like, the interesting thing, he's doing Fox News. He clearly wants to appeal to right of center New York City viewers. What policy concessions are we seeing here? What's he giving right of center people? He's not offering anything. By the way, he's still apparently campaigning at the leisurely pace. And Sliwa joked that he spent half the summer in the Hamptons. What is, by the way, the other fascinating thing is he making the argument, you can't vote for Mamdani because he's never had a real job. Meanwhile, I've been governor. Look at that great thing I did running the housing and urban development in Bill Clinton's term. I've done a lot of government jobs. That's what makes me different from Mamdani, who's only had government jobs. Like, would it kill anybody who does some private sector work here? Is it really too much to ask? So, it's a really lousy offer, for a conservative. And so, like, Sliwa, now look, I've seen, it feels like in the last 48, 72 hours, there's been an increased pressure on Sliwa to get out of the race. Katzmanis, I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the head of WABC, who basically said he thinks Sliwa was on WABC up in New York for a long time. And people said that, despite the call from Katz as a nickname, Sliwa is going to stay in the race. If Curtis Sliwa's 900 cats themselves developed the ability to speak and said, Curtis Sliwa, please leave the race, I still don't think he would do it. And the man loves cats more than Alf. That's how much he loves cats. And so, like, Sliwa, like, one of the things that, look, in all likelihood, this ends with Mamdani getting elected. Sliwa is going to get scapegoated, and he really doesn't deserve it because, first of all, and this argument of like, oh, Eric Adams decided to withdraw, and everybody thinks he's going to get some, job offer from the Trump administration or something. As he said in our interview with us, there's only one job Curtis Sliwa has ever wanted, right? He loves New York City. He is just straight up. This is what he wants to do with his life. This is his focus. He loves the city so much he took off his beret for the debate. That's how much he loves it. So, like, why is the entire city rejecting this guy for the sleazeball who got driven out of office the first time? Like, I can't get my head around this. So when people say, by Sliwa staying in the race, you're making the just for more, Mamdani is going to win the race. Look, Cuomo had to offer something better. People who didn't want Mamdani had to offer something better. Why are New York Republicans supposed to come riding to the rescue of the state's biggest sleazebag this side of Elliot Spitzer in order to prevent, Mamdani? So it's infuriating. New York, I've never seen an electorate mirror the management of the Jets. I just.
Yeah, that's not what you want. Sliwa was asked about this. You flagged this interview that he did. There's a transcript of it. And he mentions the fact that when Andrew Cuomo was running again, or maybe right after he got reelected in 2014 as governor, that Cuomo said, if you're conservative and you believe in the right to life and in the Second Amendment, you have no place in New York. You need to leave. And now he's begging these people, if they stayed, for their vote. And then he's also talked about some of these other people who've said, look, we don't want Cuomo, but he's the only one who's got a chance. Bill Ackman has been one of these guys, and so they asked him about that. And first of all, Sliwa talks about Ackman pretending to be a tennis player or a pro tennis player, and then he goes after his politics. Does he know anything about politics? No. Does he live in New York City? No. He lives in Chappaqua, the whitest suburb of America, where even the lawn jockeys are white. He may know Wall Street. He might know hedge funds, but he has been very wrong every step of the way with billionaires, and I don't know what Ackman's track record is like, but that seems like a no to me from Curtis Sliwa.
Yeah. Again, why? Why is he responsible for that? Why is it up to Curtis Sliwa to save the bacon of Andrew Cuomo? Yeah. Cuomo's had many shots at it. New Yorkers know who Andrew Cuomo is. They're really underwhelmed. So it's just so infuriating.
Exactly. And I did look at Andrew Cuomo. It seems like about the time he was 25, so probably right about the time he graduated from law school. Worked for his dad, who was governor for the next 8 years. Then he worked for David Dinkins for most of his administration. Then he went to work at HUD for Clinton, first as an assistant secretary, then the full secretary in the second term. He was in private practice from 2001 to 2006 when he got elected attorney general, and then he was in government ever since up until the time he got forced out of office. So he's got 6 years of private sector experience for a guy who's almost 70 years old. So,
and as we all know, when former politicians get private sector jobs, they're hired on the merits. They're hired, just ask Hunter Biden. When European or when Ukrainian pipeline companies, are looking, that's who they go for.
Yeah. Exactly right.
Neither one of these guys are exactly sterling heroes of the private sector. So
no, he is right about one thing: Mamdani will destroy the city. It's just a matter of how long it'll take him to do it. But he is not the answer. All right. Well, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, and as we've mentioned, October 10th was World Mental Health Day, and maybe this is the time of year, maybe this is just the time in your life where you need a little bit of extra help sorting through what's going on in your personal life, your professional life, or something else that's happening. Maybe there's just a lot of issues going on at the same time, and it's just time to talk to someone who's helped other people go through this, and that is where BetterHelp can help you.
BetterHelp does the initial matching work for you so that you can focus on your therapy goals. A short questionnaire helps identify your needs and preferences, and their 10 years of experience, more than 10 years of experience, an industry-leading match fulfillment rate means they typically get it right the first time. And if you aren't happy with your match, you can switch to a different therapist at any time from their tailored recommendations.
Yeah, and they've got an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on more than 1.7 million client reviews. So we're celebrating the therapists who have helped millions of people take a step forward. And if you're ready to find the right therapist for you, BetterHelp can help you start that journey. 3 Martini Lunch listeners get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/3ML. That's better, HELP.com/3ML. All right, Jim, on to the crazy martini now. And it's been a long time since we talked about Karine Jean-Pierre. Of course, the Biden administration ended in January, and since then she's supposedly been hard at work on her new book, Independent, and now that book, I guess, is just about ready to come out, and advanced copies are going out. And so this is the Fox News version of the story. Former Biden White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre unleashed on the Democratic Party in an excerpt from her new memoir explaining why she decided to become an independent after years as a party flack. In the excerpt, Jean-Pierre detailed the phone call in which then-President Joe Biden told the White House team that he was dropping out of the race. Quote, Biden seemed to be totally at peace with his decision, but I was stunned. My feelings a blur. I was angry and sad. I was enraged and heartbroken that this man who had given more than 50 years of his life to serving the American people, and in the end he'd been treated poorly by members of his own party. It was horrible. She said she never thought he would drop out, and she repeatedly touted Biden's physical and mental viability over the years from the podium, which certainly damages her credibility. There's one quote in here, Jim, that you flagged. Biden was an incumbent, she said. He had no scandals, and by any objective measure, he had done a great job. Jim, we could spend weeks on special podcasts explaining how that is so untrue on so many different levels. There were lots of scandals. He did not do a good job on virtually everything. But Karine Jean-Pierre is still drinking the Kool-Aid.
So I found myself genuinely wanting to read Kamala Harris's campaign memoir. I've written about it for National Review. It's going to appear in a future print issue. In the sense that, like, look, she hadn't done too many interviews until she did her amazing one with Rachel Maddow, in which she admitted that she didn't pick Pete Buttigieg because he was gay. Meaning the only person I've ever heard say I didn't hire the person because they were gay is Vice President Kamala Harris. Karine Jean-Pierre, kind of an odd choice to write a White House memoir, because if you think about it, what is the job of the White House press secretary? To tell us what the president is doing and to tell us how the president is doing. To quote the meme, you had one job, right? And her like, so the idea of now it can be told. Well, wait a minute. No, your job was to tell us. Your job was not to hide information. Your job was a spokesman speaking. It's right out there. As I'm fond of pointing out in an interview with CNN back in around the middle of Biden's term, she said, he has so much energy, I can barely keep up with him. Strong evidence that Karine Jean-Pierre needed to see a doctor, because she definitely should be able to keep up with I believe at that point he was a near octogenarian or knocking on the door of being an octogenarian. So there's a question of what was she going to say in this and also she the title, Independent. She wanted to look beyond partisan politics. Now, when you spent 4 years as the White House press secretary, I think you're in the business of partisan politics. I don't think you could say, I'm this neutral centrist who doesn't really identify. And I had figured the Independent, so she's leaving the Democratic Party to move to the left. Now, maybe there's more in the book we haven't seen in these excerpts, but it's like, no, she left the Democratic Party because of its unreasonable position that Joe Biden should not be the 2024 nominee after he had pooped the bed in the debate. Like, it wasn't just a generally, they were too harsh or too early. Like at that point, everybody in the party could see what was going on. And the question was, did you want the certain loss with Joe Biden, or did you want to roll the dice in Kamala Harris? Now, they lost either way, but I think had Biden been the nominee, Trump would have won by an even wider margin. I think you look at the numbers. He was polling badly nationally. He was polling badly in the swing states. He had done badly in that debate. There was no, but he had never, he's got so much energy. He had never finished a practice debate. Every single one of them he had to stop because he got too tired. He napped through several practice sessions. This is all in those, not just the Tapper book, but all the books that came out after that. So, like, I'm also kind of looking at the thing, like, who on the Biden team thought he was going to go up on stage on debate night and do fantastic? Just magically. He was, I don't want to quote Allen Iverson. Practice. We're talking about practice, But the idea, like, if you couldn't get through a practice debate coherently, what were the odds you were going to get through a real debate? Fine. Karine Jean-Pierre doesn't want to address any of this stuff. She also wants to insist there were no scandals. What do you think this was? The fact that he was, never, that you could never see him on camera. Then she has this interview with Tim Miller of the Bulwark. Tim Miller and the Bulwark and I do not always see eye to eye, but kudos to him for getting this interview and pushing her on this and saying that Biden did not address the country very much. And he says, point that Donald Trump talks to the public a lot more than Joe Biden did. And she says, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. He spoke to the country several times a week. Several times a week, Greg! Now, as you know, Trump talks to the public sometimes several times a day. The problem with Trump is not that, we don't have access to him. The problem is we can't get him to shut up. The problem is his mouth keeps getting him in trouble, and he keeps talking when he should not be. That's the problem. So we've gone from one to the other here. But Joe Biden, and so between that, the assertion that he was scandal-free, the assertion that he had done a fine job, we're dealing with Baghdad Bob territory. We're dealing with somebody who will insist with a straight face that 2 + 2 = 5, which is not exactly shocking, but it is nice to see the confirmation that even now, where she could come out and say, Yeah, looking back on it, Biden was getting old. But she's insisting that Biden could remain president today, even though he's currently getting chemotherapy for prostate cancer. I mean, that's 2 + 2 = 5. That is just insisting false things are true. And I think it tells us, and by the way, I think look, a lot of politicians lie, a lot of politicians spin and all that stuff, but it's really bad to have a White House press secretary who lies as easily and transparently as Karine Jean-Pierre did. And I think we can now close the book metaphorically and literally on her. And I think she'll go off. No one's going to care what Karine Jean-Pierre has to say after today.
I think that's largely correct. But given how many times she blatantly lied about his condition from the podium, was she in much of a position at this point to change it and retain any shred of credibility if she had any left in the first place?
Yeah. Again, the only thing was the curiosity about this book was she going to concede anything that she had denied for the entirety of the 4 years there? Oh, also apparently does not mention Kirby, remember the time there was tension about, Kirby was supposedly briefings that were more focusing on national security and foreign policy. He'd been the Pentagon press spokesman. A lot of people saw it as him coming in as a sign that the others at the White House were underwhelmed with her performance. Although I would point out that in her book, Kamala Harris complains that Karine Jean-Pierre never defended her. So, to her, if nothing else, Kamala Harris really believed that her public reputation suffered because she wasn't getting enough public support from Karine Jean-Pierre. So, further evidence that maybe Kamala Harris didn't really have a full perspective on things either.
I'm not going to miss either one of them. I can say that with great confidence. So, Jim, happy Tuesday to you. I will actually be out the rest of the week. Craig Collins, who subbed once while Jim was in India, will be in my seat over the next few days, and I'll see you again on Monday. Have a good week.
Listener Greg, safe travels, and listeners, tune in for the rest of the week to see how many times I call Craig Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. They really do help us. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a great Tuesday and tune in again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.